Welcome back to episode 5 of NBA by Jellyman. In this week's episode, we cover off the week in review, so week 4 review, the winners, point scorers, and highlighted games. And then also topic 2 will be highlighted teams. Topic 3, highlighted players, stats and insights on those players. Topic 4 will be the stats and consistencies. And then last but not least, topic 5 will be the NBA Week 5 preview. So I've switched it around a bit this week to sort of get that flow right. And obviously we'll include in the show notes those stats and consistencies, highlighted teams, all that sort of jazz that you can sort of pick out and use for your week ahead of tipping, punting, and whatever else floats your boat. Look, we'll jump straight into it. So obviously topic 1, week 4 in review. What we've got there is obviously mentioning the daily winners, but analysing a highlighted game from that day as well. So looking back to Tuesday's game, or games, obviously we had all 30 teams play with Wednesday, there being no games. So the Wizards beat the Hornets. PJ Washington had 25 points. The Rockets beat the Magic. Jalen Green had 34 points. The Pistons beat the Thunder. SGA, another 33 points. Pacers beat the Pelicans. Miles Turner had a huge game, 37 points. Sixers, they beat the Suns. Embiid had 33, so obviously the Suns were away. Philadelphia finally notching a win against a good team. The Hawks beat the Bucks. Murray had 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 11 assists. And if I remember correctly, Trae Young didn't play. The Blazers, they beat the Heat. Jeremy Grant had 23 points on his way to a big week ahead. The Bulls beat the Raptors. Levine had 30 points. The Knicks beat the Wolves. Randall, 31 points. The Nuggets beat the Spurs just. Jokic, a near triple-double, 26 points, 8 rebounds, and 10 assists. The Mavericks, they beat the Nets. Luka had 36 in that one. The Warriors beat the Kings. Curry had 47 points. And then the Jazz beat the Lakers. They actually smashed the Lakers by about 23 points. And then the Clippers beat the Cavs. The Cavs are actually up by about 10 or so points with, I want to say, 2 minutes and 18 left on the clock. And then the Clippers just knuckled down on defense. The Cavs didn't get good shots, and the Clippers came back and won that one. The highlight game of the day was the Celtics beat the Grizzlies. So Tatum, he had 39 points, and Morant had 30 points. To go along with that, Horford played quite well, 6 of 7 from the field. Jaylen Brown was okay. Brogdon off the bench didn't shoot necessarily well. And then on the other side, Bane didn't play too well. Brooks was in foul trouble, actually ended up fouling out. So it was the depth of the Grizzlies, potentially not having Adams as well, also hurt them. But they're also without Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. So they're playing slightly undermanned, even though the depth is there for those guys. That was Tuesday's games anyway. Obviously, Wednesday were the no games due to the election in the US. And then we move on to Thursday. So Thursday, we had the Magic. They beat the Mavericks. Franz Wagner, he had 22 points. The Blazers, they beat the Hornets. Lillard came back and had 26 points. Nuggets beat the Pacers. Tyrese had 21 points and 12 assists. The Celtics beat the Pistons and Brown had 30 points. The Nets, they beat the Knicks. KD, 29 points, 12 rebounds and 12 assists. The Raptors, they beat the Rockets. Van Vliet had 32 points. Pelicans beat the Bulls. DeRozan had 33 points after being quiet for a few games in a row. The Suns, they beat the Wolves. Bridges, so that's Mikal Bridges, he had 31 points. The Bucks beat the Thunder in OT. Obviously, the Bucks were without Holiday and Giannis. SGA had 39 points, and Javon Carter on the other side had about 36 points. Grizzlies, they beat the Spurs in OT. Bane had 32 points. The Clippers, they beat the Lakers. PG had 29. LeBron actually played and then hurt his groin. That's why he's out at the moment. Kings, they beat the Cavs. Mitchell had 38 points. And our highlighted game of the day was the Jazz beating the Hawks in Atlanta. Markkanen had 32 points and 8 rebounds. Clarkson had 23 points. But something we will touch on a bit later. But Capella, he had 15 points and 19 rebounds. Young Murray, Young 22, Murray 26. So quite a lot of scoring in that game. As it can be seen for a lot of Jazz's games, their defensive rating and efficiency is up, but they score a lot more points, which means the other team scores a lot more points. So there are a lot of points being scored on the Jazz still. So although their defensive efficiency rating is up because they're scoring more and they're shooting a lot more of the ball, their actual defense in general isn't too great, at least on the road trip they're currently on, seeing they got beaten today. Moving on to Friday. So Friday's games, only a few games on a Friday. So the Wizards beat the Mavericks. Kuzma had 36 points and said after the game, run the offense through me. Hawks beat the Sixers. Capella had 18 points and 20 rebounds, so another big game for Clint. Heat beat the Hornets. Butler had a near triple-double, 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists. Our highlighted game of the day was the Blazers. They beat the Pelicans, and Jeremy Grant had 27 points. What else happened to that game? Simons had 23 points, Little off the bench, 15 points. And then for New Orleans, it was Zion, 29 points, but the average shooting from CJ and then Ingram being tied up late. But what impressed me about this game was the Blazers were on the road in New Orleans in a hostile environment. But the way they closed out in the second half, let me just get the actual numbers up here. They just allowed just 38 points to the Pelicans. So while scoring 55 of their own, 55 to 38 is always going to get it done in a game. So it was their sort of defensive lockdown and how they went to that zone in the second half that really impressed us. So that's obviously, that was Friday's games. Moving on to Saturday. So Saturday we had the Celtics beat the Nuggets. Tatum had another 34 points. Magic beat the Suns. Quite surprising, but Carter Jr., 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. Knicks beat the Wizards. Barrett had 30. The Thunder beat the Raptors in a high-scoring game again, so that's something we want to touch on as well, the Thunder and high-scoring games. Spurs beat the Bucks. Johnson had 29. Grizzlies beat the Wolves. Morant, 28, 10 and 8. And the Kings beat the Lakers. Fox with 32 points. Our highlighted game was the Warriors beat the Cavs. Curry had 40 and Donovan Mitchell had 29. Similar again with the Cavs, and what we've seen on this road trip so far is they struggle to close out games when it's a close one on the road. They still don't have that plays towards the end of the game. Now, I don't know if it's coaching staff or just then hoping that Mitchell will just do it all himself, but they look quite disjointed towards the back end of games. So unless they're blowing out teams, they aren't a sure thing towards the back end of games. And, well, at least on the road, we've seen that so far. But we also saw them come back today against the T-Wolves, which we will touch on later in the piece. But in that one, Mitchell obviously 29, 10 and 9, so a near triple-double. Mobley had 20 and 13. And then for the Warriors, Wiggins 20, Curry 40, Paul off the bench with 18 points. So that was Saturday's games. Now moving on to Sunday, the Nets beat the Clippers. KD had 27. The Wizards beat the Jazz. KP, so Porzingis, 31 points and 10 rebounds. Celtics beat the Pistons. Tatum, another big game, 43 points and 10 rebounds. Pacers, so that was Celtics beat the Pistons. Pacers beat the Raptors. Hield had 22 points. Sixers beat the Hawks. Embiid, 42 points on the way to his big couple of days. Heat, they beat the Hornets. Max Strus had 31 points. Pelicans beat the Rockets. Zion, another big game with 26 points. Our highlighted game was the Mavericks beating the Blazers. So obviously the Blazers coming off that good win against the Pelicans, then actually traveling into Dallas, and they lost by 5 points. Luka had 42 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists. And on the other side, Simons 24 points, Lillard 29 points, and Jeremy Grant a big game with 37 points. Dinwiddie also had 20 points, and Christian Wood off the bench for the Mavericks had 19 points. So quite a lot of scorers in that game. That's one thing to look at with the Mavericks is they're not well spread scoring wise. It's been a lot of Hardaway, Wood, Dinwiddie, Doncic, often Powell, Bullock, and Finney-Smith are there for shooting and defense, and that's it. And then everything else runs through Luka. And then when Hardaway comes on and gives Luka a rest, it then goes to Dinwiddie's hands. So look at those guys for point scoring for the Dallas Mavericks. That was, I guess, Sunday's games. Moving on to Monday, we had the Thunder this morning, which obviously I'm shooting this on a Monday afternoon. We had the Thunder beat the Knicks, 280 total points. So 145 to 135. That's our highlighted game of the day. Obviously SGA, he had 37 points, but throughout that game, it was just run and gun. I mean, looking at the quarter scores, we had the opening quarter, 48 to 36. The Knicks win that one. The Thunder had 43 points in the second quarter. Knicks 25. Third quarter, 43-33. And last quarter, it tailed off a bit with 29 to the Knicks, 23 to the Thunder. But super high scoring game. And that's what, I guess, the Thunder look like they want to play. They want to get out in transition. They want to shoot the three. They shot 62%. So I don't know how much of that is the Thunder playing really, really well and the Knicks defense just being terrible in an early days game for them. But anyway, the rest of Monday saw the Wolves beat the Cavs. So this Underman Cavs. Garland had 51 points for the Cavs and almost got them that comeback. The Wizards beat the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies were without Morant and Bane though. Sixers beat the Jazz. Embiid had 59 points, top Garland's 51. The Nuggets smashed the Bulls in Chicago. Porter Jr. had 31 points. And then the Kings, they beat the Warriors. Sabonis had 26 points and 22 rebounds, and Fox was clutch down the stretch. That was last week's games. We now look ahead to obviously next week and a big week ahead. But firstly, we want to touch on 4 highlighted teams. So we've got Boston, Memphis, Portland, and Utah. So the Boston Celtics, 10-3 record, differential of +6. They've won 6 in a row. They're averaging 119 plus points for and 113 points against, so their points are up in those ones. Tatum, he's averaging 32 plus points, 7 plus rebounds, and 4 assists. Brown, he's averaging 25 plus points, 6 plus rebounds, and 3 plus assists. So our insight for this one is looking at Brown and Tatum 25 plus points apiece. It's been super consistent throughout the season so far. And against teams that potentially are going to take the Celtics to that fourth quarter. So obviously not have Boston blow them out, because then either of those 2 players will probably most likely be rested. But against teams that, they're going to go to the finish line, they divert scoring. The way their minutes are set up is, Tatum comes on and he goes off early in the piece, and then Jaylen Brown has the rest of the quarter until about the 2-minute mark. And then 2-minute mark, Tatum comes back on for Brown and gives Brown his rest, and then each of them have their share of the offense, and then Brogdon comes in and also helps out with that and plays a bit off, helps them play off the ball. Memphis Grizzlies, so they're a 9-5 record, differential of just plus 1.4. Morant, he's averaging 28 plus points, 6 rebounds and 7 assists. Bane, he's averaging 24 plus points, 4 plus rebounds and 4 assists. Our insight in that one is once again those 2 backcourt players, one or the other going off. So it is hard to pick, I guess, one or the other to go off, but have a look at their recent scoring, who they're coming up against. So, is Morant going to be guarded by the other good point guard, or will he get a tall, or, will Bane be in the pick and roll a lot more? Having a look at the things that, with it, Morant, if it's someone in the paint, like someone who's a bit slower, like a Jokic, or I can't think of the top of my head, but guys who don't protect the paint well, like the Utah Jazz, for example, seeing that they don't protect the paint well, so Morant's likely to go off against them, and et cetera, et cetera. And then Bane, who doesn't defend the 3-ball well on that pick and roll. So maybe it is a big who does defend the paint well. So differing it up between those 2, not combining them together, is a really good pick of the matter. So once again, just, I guess, analysing that. Morant's good with no rim protection. If there is rim protection, Bane's really good in the pick and roll, because he brings that rim protection out and either gets dips and dives to the hoop, or he shoots the open 3 because the big stays back on that pick and roll. Moving on to the Portland Trailblazers, so their record is 9-4, differential plus 1.9. Lillard, in his few games, averaging 28 plus points, 5 rebounds and 6 assists. Grant, he's averaging 20 plus points and 4 plus rebounds. Simons, he's averaging 22 plus points and 4 assists. Our insight there is the Blazers plus line is always worth a look. So been super consistent at the moment. Trying to see if they're playing tomorrow. They aren't, but having a look at their plus line is always a good, obviously, look into. That's a little bit of insight there. The Utah Jazz, so they're a 10-5 record. They've lost a couple in a row now. Differential plus 4.2. They have been out on the road quite a bit, so once they head back home, look for them to get on a bit of a win streak. Markkanen, he's averaging 21 plus points and 8 plus rebounds. Clarkson averaging 18 plus points. Our insight there is from the other side. So they've actually been allowing points to bigs. And as I said, they actually allowed points to attacking guards as well, because they don't protect the paint well. So Embiid just had a 50 piece against them, and then Kristaps Porzingis 30 plus points, but then also Morant had, I think, 37 points. So look for the scorers on the opposition team that like to attack the ring, whether that's a big, whether it's a small forward, whether it's a point guard. Any of those players against the Jazz could have quite big nights against Utah. So that covers off 4 highlighted teams. We'll try to do that week to week, depending on, consistencies and everything like that. But those are our 4 highlighted teams. So those insights should really help, and we'll sort of leave them there. Or if you have any questions on that insight, feel free to reach out. Topic 3, so highlighted players, as well as their sort of stats and insights. So Kevin Durant, averaging 30 plus points, 6 plus rebounds and 5 assists. He's had 26 plus points in all 14 of his games. Donovan Mitchell, averaging 31 plus points, 4 plus rebounds and 6 plus assists. He's had 30 plus points in 8 of 11 games. Doncic, So Luka averaging 34 plus points, 8 plus rebounds, and 8 plus assists. He had 30 plus points in 10 of 12 games, so obviously quite a few stats there. Stephen Curry averaging 32 plus points, 6 plus rebounds, and 6 plus assists. He's had 30 plus points in 9 of 12 games. Giannis, obviously been out recently, averaging 31 plus points, 12 plus rebounds, 5 plus assists. SGA, so Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, averaging 31 plus points, 4 plus rebounds, and 5 plus assists. He's had 28 plus points in 9 of 12 games. And then Joel Embiid, averaging 32 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, and 4 plus assists. He's had 25 plus points in 9 of his 10 games. So, as I said, we'll include that in our stats and insights and stats and consistencies. But that just gives you a bit of overview of how those top players are faring. So, all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those players are in the running for MVP this year. Obviously, SGA with the OKC may be too far down the rankings, but who knows? Stranger things have happened. Topic 4, stats and consistencies. So I've got points. So there was a bit of an article or sort of write-up the other day about the points increasing this year, both for players and for, teams and ongoing. Some of it is the transition take foul. Some of it is more open offense and less defense, as I've seen year to year. The other one is they've had players have had proper preseasons. So obviously the last 3 or 4 years, there's been things with health and safety protocols. Players not being able to do what they usually do, potentially time off mentally, getting in the gym, all that sort of stuff. It all affects, and we're sort of seeing it all come to fruition now with a proper couple of pre-seasons under the belt, proper training regimen, and then also the game opening up once again and offense being a priority. So look, we'll go through the points. So Trae Young, 26 plus points in 3 of his last 4 games. DeJounte Murray, 20 plus points in 8 of his last 9 games. Tatum, we already mentioned him, but 31 plus points in his last 4 games. Jaylen Brown, 25 plus points in 3 of his last 4 games. Terry Rozier, 22 plus points in 5 of his last 7 games, or 5 of his 7 games. Zach LaVine, 20 plus points in 6 of his last 8 games. Dinwiddie, so Spencer, 20 plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. Wiggins, 20 plus points in his last 3 games. Jalen Green, 20 plus points in his last 5 games. Buddy Hield, 20 plus points in 4 of his last 5 games. Paul George, 26 plus points in 6 of his last 7 games. Anthony Davis, 20 plus points in 11 of his last 12 games. Zion, 25 plus in 4 of his last 5 games. Randall, 21 plus points in his last 5 games. Franz Wagner, 15 plus points in his last 6 games. Jeremy Grant, 23 plus points in his last 3 games. Anthony Simons, 23 plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. Sabonis, 19 plus points in his last 6 games. Keldon Johnson, 25 plus points in 6 of his last 7 games. That may all sound like gibberish. As I said, have a look in the show notes about the points. Copy, paste it to your notes, do whatever you need to be with it, but make sure you hit some winners with those points this week. Moving on to the rebounds, a bit shorter for this one. Obviously, Clint Capella from Atlanta, 12 plus rebounds in his last 5 games. Anthony Davis, 8 plus rebounds in 10 of his last 11 games. Bam, 10 plus rebounds in 4 of his last 5 games. Portis, 9 plus rebounds in 10 of his last 12. Cat, 8 plus rebounds in his last 9 games. Giddey, 6 plus rebounds in his last 5 games. Sabonis, 10 plus rebounds in 6 of his last 7 games. Halliburton, so moving on to assists. Tyrese, 9 plus assists in his last 4 games. Butler, 6 plus assists in his last 6 games. Brunson, 6 plus assists in 5 of his last 6 games. And Mike Conley, 8 plus assists in his last 4 games. That is the stats. Winning streaks currently, the Celtics have won 6 straight games, as we mentioned in their sort of overview. But the Washington Wizards have won 4 straight games, and the Sacramento Kings have won 3 straight games. 2 teams you wouldn't have thought might have been there, but they are. And it hasn't been an easy stretch for either of them. The Kings played the Warriors today, and the Wizards played the Grizzlies earlier on. The Hornets, they've lost 8 straight games, and the Cleveland Cavaliers have lost 4 straight games. Now, 3 of them were on the road, 1 back at home without Mitchell or Allen, so do with that as you may. The Detroit Pistons have lost their last 3 games. So that's the stats and consistencies. We'll obviously put that in the show notes as mentioned, so points, rebounds, assists, winning streaks, and losing streaks as well. And then we'll also include the players above, so highlighted players, stats, and insights. But moving on to the last topic is the NBA Week 5 preview. So what we've got coming up, obviously tomorrow, a few games on, but for Tuesday's games, which is tomorrow, we're looking at the Thunder versus the Celtics. Plenty of points in that one. The Thunder have opened up a lot of points of late. So looking at their points over, total points over, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they're both playing them to score a lot of points. Simple as that. The Suns versus the Heat could be a bit of a defensive slog, so looking at maybe the total points under in that one. The Suns, if they're without Chris Paul, he might be back, he might not be back. Have a look into that one. But yeah, their offense has been a bit shaky without him. The Hawks versus the Bucks, so that's version 3 already this season in the early part. So they've obviously played each other twice already. I'm not sure if Giannis is back or not. He was potentially a game-time decision last time, as well as Drew Holiday, but we'll have a look at that later on this afternoon. The Grizzlies versus the Pelicans on the Wednesday. That's a top-tier matchup. Obviously, Ja and Zion went to high school together, so looking at those two. And then the Clippers versus Mavericks, so Luka versus Paul George. So obviously, both of these teams like to play a fairly good defense, so looking at the total points under in that one as well. Thursday, we've got the Celtics versus the Hawks, so Tatum and Brown versus Young and Murray. Fairly good matchup there. The Heat versus the Raptors, another defensive battle with the Heat involved, as well as being up there in Toronto. The Cavs versus the Bucks, so the length versus length. Hopefully Mobley and Allen are both healthy, and then Giannis and Lopez are also both playing. And the Warriors versus the Suns, so the Warriors are still searching for a road win, I believe, this season. Let me confirm that one, but I'm positive they are still looking for that illustrious road victory. Where's it gone? Thursday, they're 5-8 at the moment, and they was correct that they're currently 0-7 away from home. So maybe they could get that done against the Suns, maybe not. We move on to Friday's games, so only a few games on Friday. Nets versus the Blazers, so KD versus Lillard. That should be a good matchup. And then Saturday, the Bucks versus the Sixers, so Giannis versus Embiid. Look for both those players to go at each other. They've had quite some matchups in the past. The Thunder versus the Grizzlies, another high-scoring game. And then we've got the Nuggets versus the Mavericks, so obviously Nikola versus Luka, the two European players going head-to-head. Expect a show in that one. The Celtics versus the Pelicans, so another backcourt matchup, Tatum and Brown versus CJ Zion and Ingram. And then we've got the Suns versus the Jazz, so depending on health for the Suns, that'll be an interesting matchup there. And then the Wolves versus Sixers on the Sunday, so Embiid potentially has the backup again. I actually had a write-up, and we're happy to admit when we're wrong, that Embiid was 50-50 on back-to-backs due to his niggling injuries, but he came out and scored 59, so shame on me. Must have read the write-up and gone, stuff, yeah. The Jazz and the Blazers also play on the Sunday, which should be a good matchup, but the Jazz coming off a back-to-back once again. Then moving on to the Monday, Grizzlies versus the Nets, so Ja versus KD, Heat versus the Cavs, Nuggets versus the Mavericks. Back-to-back, so they played on the Saturday against each other, and they play again, both in Dallas. So quite an interesting week of games ahead. And was obviously looking at those key matchups, trying to stay away from specific teams. We've got a short list here that we try to stick away from, the Pistons, Lakers, Knicks, and Wolves. But we've loved sort of backing in the Nets, Grizzlies, Cavs, Jazz, Pacers. Celtics can be added to that list as well. Just of a short list of teams who we have enjoyed backing. We've seen consistency from throughout, whether it's home, away, road, and their key players performing at key moments. But that's all from us this week. As always, feel free to like, follow, and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram for Sports Tips by Jellyman, NBA by Jellyman on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and then also Sports Tips by Jellyman on YouTube to sort of listen in and watch and support the platform and help us grow in these early stages. Feel free, obviously, reach out via Messenger as well if you have any questions. But that's all for this week. Happy punting.